Hello, and welcome to World Water Week. Poor wash infrastructure leaves communities exposed and more vulnerable to climate shocks. But as we know, solving wash issues takes more than just installing a toilet or a tap. Good wash requires a multifaceted approach that is grounded in good governance, community engagement, and sound policy environments. In today's talk show, we're looking at the case for climate resilient wash infrastructure and what's needed to help communities sustainably adapt to the growing uncertainties of a world affected by climate change. To dig into this conversation, I'm joined by a wonderful panel here today. We have Gashau Kebede, who is the head of programs for Water Aid Ethiopia, Fauzia Aliou, advocacy campaigns and inclusion manager at Water Aid Ghana, and Serene Malik, Executive Secretary for the African Civil Society Network on Water, ANEW, and Vice Chair for SWA. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us. Gashau, help our audience get a better sense of the issue. For those who are less familiar, please tell us, what does climate resilient wash really mean, and what are the costs of not changing the approach?
Okay, thank you very much. Climate resilient wash means services and infrastructures that withstand, adapt to, and recover from climate-related hazards. It is about resistance to vulnerabilities, it is about adaptation, and it is about recovery. In water aid, we usually design infrastructures like water supply and sanitation that can withstand from floods and that can also have adequate water during dry season.
Billy, and so what are the costs of not changing the approach? If we didn't build these new types of infrastructure items that you're talking about in terms of being resilient to droughts and floods, what are the costs of
Yeah,
to
unless we
communities?
change this approach, they may cost us in different ways. For example, they will cost us in terms of financing. If these infrastructures are damaged by floods or drought or any other climate-induced hazards, the reconstruction and rehabilitation may cost a lot. In addition, if these facilities are affected by drought or affected by flood, this may cause diseases, infectious diseases that may also reduce productivity among communities and also increase our cost for health treatment. This may also cause social issues that may create inequality between different social groups, between men and women.
Thank you so much. Fauzia, you're a technical expert working on the ground in Ghana. Gashau has already talked a little bit about some of these costs, but can you tell us from your experience of working directly with communities, how does a lack of climate resilient wash, how is it affecting the communities that you're working most closely with?
When we talk about climate change and how communities experience it, it's either too much rain or too much water or less water. So what we see in communities is drying up of water sources. We have boreholes drying up. We have a lot of flooding where latrines are flooded and wash infrastructure destroyed, like Gashao said. So what I think one woman walked up to me and she was like, since she was growing up, she was quite elderly. They've never seen the bottom of a well before. But now they see that every day. So what it means is that communities have to travel longer distances, use a lot of time in search for water, and this also exposes women and girls to other issues such as gender-based violence. And also what we see is women spending more time in terms of looking for water, in terms of taking care of the house with very limited water, so they don't have time to do other things. And these are some of the ways that they are living the experiences. The other way we have seen, which we at the community level, is also health-related risk. So when a wash facility like a latrine is destroyed or is flooded, it means that there's going to be contamination. We're seeing cholera cases coming up in even Accra, which is the capital city, and in communities because of the quality of water and exposure to due to the floods. We're seeing a lot of diarrhea and also typhoid and what other water-related diseases.
So what I'm hearing from you, Fazia, is that even though a lot of these WASH issues have previously been solved, we're going back to states of cholera, of dysentery, of really, it's as though the WASH services were never installed in the first place because they're putting out of service due to these challenges from uncertain climate and changes in precipitation and rainfall patterns. We're also seeing a greater cost to women and girls as a result of that. Serene, you are playing a key role in the civil society movement. Tell us, what do you see as the role of civil society here, and how can civil society be better engaged in these issues?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kanika. I think it's important to mention because there's something I've been seeing a lot on social media and around us, that it is the end of civil society. And I say no. We've been there for hundreds of years, depending on which form we took, whether it was a movement, whether it was structured organizations, and we will continue to do so. Why? Because these issues that Fauzia and Gishao have actually mentioned would not have been known to the world had it not been for civil society being on the ground. We work in countries, for example, where the government has their hands are tied. They cannot necessarily be on the ground and collect all these stories and these experiences that people are going through, especially now against climate change impacts. And this is where civil society comes in as its role. Now, the initial role of and the raison d'etre of civil society is really oversight. Oversight, raising awareness, and influencing. And I think within the climate change discourse, that role will probably get stronger. Number one, in terms of raising awareness, bringing these stories. Recently, I read in The Guardian, there were 3 interesting stories about a drought in Malawi and how you have these dried water wells and pans, and these families having to move 120 kilometers south in the country because they can no longer continue with any of their livelihood activities or even life as they know it. This would not have come out if we did not have civil society doing so. In terms of influencing policy, I know we'll discuss it further on, but we have these opportunities, whether within the Global Goal on Adaptation, the NDCs, the NAPs, in terms of integrating and getting WASH really in there. That is work that has to be done primarily, I believe, by civil society, of course, in collaboration with the various state actors, but also in terms of the influencing of policy. And policy always says a light suggestion, but influencing of law. WASH climate resilience needs new laws. And this is also a massive effort and undertaking that can only be done through the voice of people.
So it sounds to me, I mean, there's clearly a very strong need for continued engagement of civil society, and there are so many roles that civil society only is able to really take as being kind of proxy to the government or support to the government. I just want to come back to that last part of the question there, which is how can civil society be better engaged? What are the barriers that we need to break through in order to have the civil society continue to take that role until we fight what you were saying at the beginning, the end of civil society? How do we break through that?
I think it was really in terms of, while we talk of adaptation, there was something about civil society having to adapt to the current status of things, whether restricted funding, restricted space. But I'll say this much, civil society has always been quite agile in terms of operating in its different environments. So probably more focus or probably more resources are required in that. But also, Ganika, it's interesting because we do come under criticism in the way we actually package our information, our messages, and our evidence. I've actually sat in meetings where I'm told your evidence is not strong enough. And I'm like, what? But why? And they're like, it doesn't speak to us.
Yeah.
And I think this is really in terms of who are we speaking to? Even today, we have explained these issues, but we're all practitioners and from the sector. I really urge, and this is what we're going to push ourselves towards in terms of the better engagement, speak to someone as if they had never heard about it, because by the end of the day, the policymaker and the lawmaker is actually somebody that really doesn't know about WASH climate resilience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And I think our panel is doing a good job of that, being quite clear today. Fauzi, I'd like to come back to you to dig a bit deeper into the practical side of things. What practical steps do you see as being needed at community and district levels to strengthen climate resilience in WASH systems, and why isn't it happening already?
Okay, so for practical steps, I think one of the key things we have to look at is providing climate resilient wash infrastructure and supporting communities to construct latrines that are climate resilient. We've had a number of communities going back to defecating openly because they spend time to construct latrines, and then when the floods come, it washes away and these latrines are destroyed. So it means every year they have to construct. That comes with economic costs. So what we should be looking at is, one, supporting them with the technical ability to construct these latrines so that they are resilient, and also planning at the district level for wash resilient infrastructure. So we're looking at building the capacity of government and wash management teams at the district level so that we can strengthen the local systems to be able to plan, integrate climate change into their planning, and also to be able to integrate it in budgeting as well. They need to plan, they need to budget, and they need to look at maintaining existing infrastructure which was not planned with climate shocks in mind, and also ensure that the new wash infrastructure that is being constructed are actually climate resilient. The second thing is looking at having women and girls in decision making when it comes to wash infrastructure, what works for them, how are they able to contribute to the decision making processes, which will support in their adaptation as well
So,
to
Fauzi,
climate.
tell us, why isn't it happening? I mean, we've heard these things. We've been hearing them for a long time. We need to see women and girls more in the decision making. We need to see this type of longer term planning. Why isn't it happening? What do you think are the barriers?
So for me, at the local level, I think one of the things that we have is the gaps in capacity. Local government and communities do not have the capacity to be able to adapt. At WaterAid, we adapted securing water resources approach, which we work with, where we are able to support communities to identify risks, map water resources, and be able to plan sustainably. We have communities monitoring groundwater levels for close to 15 years now. And we do that and intentionally integrating women into the process because of how it affects them. And another reason why we are not seeing this happen is that we are not seeing WASH as part of climate adaptation processes in terms of policy. I know Serene mentioned the national adaptation plans. We don't have WASH integrated in the policies. We see WASH as when we are talking about climate financing, we don't really have a focus on how that affects WASH. So for me, one of the key ways is integrating it into national policies, the adaptation policies, and for example, in Ghana, we have the water policy, national water policy. How are we adapting, or how are we integrating climate change into these national policies? And that drives down to the district level.
Thank you,
Because,
Fausia. Yeah, I think actually it's a really great connection to actually coming back to Serene, because we want to talk a little bit about that enabling policy environment. So clearly you're saying part of this is, in order to be practical, we have to have the means in place in terms of connecting to larger policy frameworks such as the National Adaptation Planning. So tell us, Serene, tell us more about that enabling policy environment. What do you want to see more of to foster resilient WASH systems?
I think it's basically what has been mentioned over here. More of the foundational work needs to be done. You know, what is being done is very much de facto, whereby the de jure is still weak. You have countries that still do not have water policies, that still do not have the right to water and sanitation, that are still falling behind on anything that is climate resilience. I think the work has to start there in terms of the engagement with these global goal on adaptation and the various frameworks that we see within the climate change sector. And then how the intersectionality between that and the water and sanitation sector. Sometimes it's about choosing which tree you're actually going to will be barking at. I'll give you an example. We have an issue on the continent on the recognition, and this is the other thing, the recognition of women and girls in all things wash and in all the sectors. And we been pushing through the Africa Water Vision policy post 2025. We were successful in getting women and girls to be explicitly mentioned, not lumped under inclusivity, because that's when you become invisible. That visibility, the power of words is really important. Now, what we did is that we looked at treaties that had nothing to do with the water sector. For example, the protection of women's dignity. And we found that the right to water and sanitation was missing. So now that we're going to go influence from that side to be able to to have it trickle down. So basically, my point is that here, maybe we should turn the focus, a bit more towards influencing those climate change policies, which then can trickle down while we're doing the work on the other side. And the first thing is the recognition. It has been recognized, but when you look at the issue of gender, for example, or women and girls who bear the brunt of this, as always, it's not, we're not there yet. Yeah. And I think coming back to your first question on the role of civil society, it's really up to us to try and get us there. Remember, our job is not product. It's not. I learned this recently. It is not product. It is process. Product is governments to deliver. We deliver on process, which means bringing everybody together and having that conversation, multi-stakeholder platforms, the policies, whatever it is, to help them deliver on the product, and then making certain parts of segments of society visible as well.
I think that's something I'm certainly going to take with me. The job is not product, it's process. That's brilliant. Gishao, let's come back to you. In your work and working in Ethiopia and across the African continent, tell us a little bit about what you see in terms of innovation in the field. What are you seeing more of now that's new and exciting to you, and what's driving that innovation?
Yeah, okay, thank you. There are a couple of innovations happening in the climate resilient wash sector now in Ethiopia and globally that can add value. To mention a few, the decentralized sanitation systems are a very good example for climate resilient wash systems. For example, in Ethiopia, we do decentralized fecal sludge treatment plant for small and medium towns that can be adapted and contextually specific to small and medium towns. Take Ethiopia, for example, with a small and medium town of more than 1,000 without sanitation systems and without climate resilient technologies that can adapt and withstand to the context for flooding, for example. So those decentralized sanitation systems are a very good example of climate resilient wash interventions. The second one could be the nature-based solutions. In Ethiopia, for example, we do nature-based solutions in rural communities. The watershed intervention projects that can easily be adapted to local context, that can easily increase water availability in communities and also increase productivity in the rural communities is also an area that can add value to the sector. It's not an easy content. Nature-based adaptations, especially for rural context, is very relevant and very important for climate adaptation, but also for mitigation as well. The third could be...
sorry, Gishao, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to hold you there. We have less than 1 minute left in our conversation, and I'd love to come back to all of you to talk briefly about strategic partnership. We know that partnerships are really key to making all of this happen. We need a lot of different stakeholders at the table. So could you tell me who is it that you hope to be speaking more to in the future? And I'm going to give you 10 seconds each. So who do you want to be speaking with more in the future?
Yeah, in the future, the engagement of public-private partnership is very key for climate resilient wash, because private sector, they are the main water use sector. They are the high water use sector. So without involving private sector, it is unlikely to achieve climate resilient wash. So the involvement of public-private partnership is very key.
Perfect. Thank you. 10 seconds.
10 seconds. So for me, I would say engaging more with communities to be able to support them to adapt, because climate change is already here. They are experiencing it. How do we provide the skill necessary for them to be able to adapt? So for me, that's one key partnership we should be looking at moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Serene. 10 seconds.
I think heads of states. Heads of states are the people we need to speak to. Most of the time, they are not aware of all the nitty-gritties and the enormity or the significance of this issue.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gashao, Fauzia, and Serene for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit down with you and discuss today. We're clearly already late when it comes to building up climate resilient wash, but hopefully the stories and the insights that you've shared today will drive inspiration and bring more to the table. Thank you again, and thank you so much to our audience here in Stockholm and joining us online. Until the next time, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good conversation.